Call your witness.
State calls Amber Kaiser.
Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you have to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Once you're seated, state your full name, spelling your last, please.
Amber Kaiser, Kyzer.
Pull that just a little bit closer to you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kaiser.
Good afternoon.
In what county do you currently reside?
West Columbia, Lexington County.
Ms. Kaiser, how is it that you know the victims in this case, Tara, Eli, and Tom, Abigail, and Daniel?
They are my children.
How is it that you know the defendant in this case to be the judge?
He is my ex-husband of 9 years.
Have you been in this courtroom until this moment?
No,
Why is that?
I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
What were the dates of birth for each of your children? And I'm going to conduct to you the documents which are already in evidence. Beginning with Defense Exhibit 58.
My marriage license.
States Exhibits 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107. And I want to start by asking you a few questions about these documents.
Okay.
Ms. Kaiser, when were you and Timothy Johnson married?
June 29th of 2004,
And in what state were you married in?
Chicago, Illinois.
Regarding your children, what were the dates of birth for each of your children and in what state were they born?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Mira Gracie, born in Pennsylvania, 5/15/2006. Elias Xavier, born in Mississippi, 4/22/07. Natana said, born 4/11/2008, born in Mississippi. Gabriel Asher, born here in South Carolina, 12/5/2011. And my daughter Abigail Elizabeth, born here in South Carolina, 12/12/12.
12.
Yes.
Ms. Kaiser, when you first lived here as a family in Lexington County, where did you live?
We lived in Leesville, Batesburg.
Leesville, Batesburg, here.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the address there?
210 Russell Row Road.
Approximately what year was it that your family relocated here in South Carolina?
I believe it was around July of 2011.
What is it that brought your family, your children, your husband at that time, to South Carolina?
Intel, a job that had been offered to my then husband.
Was a job opportunity within town?
Yes, ma'am.
And who would stay home with the children during the day as your husband worked in town?
I did.
While living here in Lexington County, were any of your children born here?
Yes.
Which college?
I'm sorry?
Which college now?
Born here. Scarlett.
So I want to ask a little bit more about that.
Yes.
Do you have a daughter today?
I do.
What is her name?
Scarlett Rose Kaiser.
And what is her date of birth?
Oh, God. She is 8/9/2015.
Who is her father?
Sean Kaiser.
Are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
Amber, I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about your background with Tennessee Jones. What state did you grow up
Pennsylvania.
in? And ultimately, how is it that you met the defendant, Timothy Jones?
I moved out to Chicago, where my mother was.
And while living in Chicago, about how old were you when you met him?
19.
Where was it that the two of you met?
It was at a workplace called Enchanted Castle.
Enchanted Castle. Tell us a little bit about that place.
It's a children's facility, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, if you will.
And what did you do there at Enchanted Castle?
I ran the redemption desk.
And what about Timothy Jones?
I believe he did the same.
How long did the two of you date after meeting at Enchanted Castle?
6 weeks.
You were married after 6 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
Early in your relationship, did you attend church together?
Yes, ma'am.
Explain how that came about.
When I met Tim, he was already involved in the church. I was not. I was working 3 jobs. I thought, wow, this guy has it together. He was going to school part-time, working part-time, and had church under the belt. I started going with him to these services, and we found a church family together.
So I want to ask a little bit more about that. You said you dated 6 weeks before marriage. What
Yes.
was it that encouraged you to marry Timothy Jones after the 6 weeks of dating?
In the church that we were attending, I guess you could say they didn't believe in long dating periods. They felt like it was too enticing to be around each other and not be married. So, in retrospect, we decided to get married. He was already speaking in the church, and we thought that it was more appropriate to get married.
And you mentioned that he had a job and was attending school. Where was he attending school back then when you first met?
College of DuPage.
DuPage, and that's in Illinois.
Yes, ma'am.
What was his undergraduate degree, or what type of degree was he pursuing at the time?
I believe he was going for pediatric doctor, something along those lines. I don't know the specific word for it.
So he spoke with you about that as far back as when the two of you first met?
Yes, ma'am.
That he wanted to be a doctor.
Yes.
What else attracted you to him?
Tim was very goal-oriented. Sorry.
You mentioned that you attended.
Very smart man. And everything that he had set out to do as a goal, he accomplished, and I found that very honorable. That's one of the main things that attracted me to him.
And you were how old when the two of you were married?
He's 19.
And Amber, you yourself, at that point in time, did you have a college degree?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Were you attending college?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Had you obtained a high school diploma at that stage in your life?
No, ma'am.
So you mentioned that the two of you started attending a church together early in your marriage. How would you describe this church? Or do you know what branch of church this was?
It was an apostolic church, also known as Pentecostal.
And this is in Illinois.
Yes, ma'am.
What, if any, restrictions did the church, that church, to which you originally attended, have in place for females?
Women generally were not allowed to cut or trim their hair. No pants, no makeup, no jewelry. The more they underlined modesty for women to a T.
And what, if anything, did Tim say about these restrictions for women?
It was just that it was a woman's. Tim's motto was, "Women are supposed to be fruitful and multiply. A woman is supposed to listen to her husband."
Did the majority of the females within the church follow these restrictions based on your observations?
Yes.
Did you also begin to follow these restrictions?
Yes, I did.
Eventually, did the two of you find a place of your own after you were married and he was attending DePage College in Illinois?
We did.
And after DePage College, where did you next attend school?
After College of DuPage, we would have moved down to Mississippi, and he would have attended Itawamba Community College next.
So Itawamba is a college in Mississippi.
Yes.
And what type of degree was he pursuing at this stage?
I can't recall at this time. I can't recall.
Approximately how long was he at Itawamba?
I can't recall that either.
From there, where did he next attend college?
MSU, Mississippi State University.
So when you say MSU, you're referring to Mississippi State.
Yes, ma'am.
While attending Mississippi State, what was his undergraduate degree that he was pursuing?
Computer science and engineering.
Where did your family live while attending Mississippi State?
We were living on campus housing.
So at this point in time, once you're living on campus housing, you're in Mississippi State, you're at Mississippi State College, how many of your children have been born?
3.
That's Mira, Eli, and Ty.
Yes, ma'am.
They all live here on campus while Tim was attending school.
Yes.
While attending Mississippi State, did the defendant have the opportunity to travel overseas?
Yes, he did.
Where did he go?
South Korea.
And for what purpose?
I believe it was just offered out by the school as an opportunity.
Last trip,
Yes.
but related to Mississippi State.
Yes.
Now, after his graduation from Mississippi State, where did your family go to live next?
We moved it down here directly, I believe. Yes.
So immediately upon his graduation from
Yes.
Mississippi State, he got the job at Intel,
He did.
and your family relocated here in Lexington County.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe your previous testimony was you were living in Lexington, you were living in the
Leesville, Batesburg. Yes, I'm sorry.
Where did you, or what type of housing did you have when you first moved here as a family when you initially got that job in Intel?
It was a rundown trailer. Needed a lot of work done to it.
How many children were born at this age?
Well, I was pregnant with Gabriel at the time, so still had the 3.
And practically all of
Yes, ma'am.
them. Were you working at this stage of your marriage, Ms. Kaiser?
Just as a mother.
What do you mean by that?
A mother has many, many jobs. So yes, I worked every day as a mother, as a provider, as his wife. I worked in my house every day, yes.
And at that stage, were any of the children actually in formal school?
No.
You were at home pretty much all day with all 3 of your older children.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe you may have mentioned before, but what, if anything, did Tim say about your role in the marriage?
Women were to Women are to be seen and not heard. I was merely to take care of the children, to keep them out of his way, and to do as he asks as my husband.
He ever discussed with you how many children he wanted?
Well, at one point he wanted a farm full, he said. Yeah.
And Ms. Kaiser, under the circumstances you were facing at the time, were you able to make your marriage work?
No.
And ultimately, did you make the decision to leave the marriage?
Yes, I did.
During that time, did you become involved with someone?
Yes, I did.
Who was that person?
Sean Kaiser.
Person you're married to now?
Yes, ma'am.
Scarlett's father.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have the two of you been together?
8 years, married 4.
Who was the first to file for separation in the marriage with Timothy Jones?
Tim.
And approximately when did you become pregnant with your daughter Abigail, your last child?
March
2000.
of 2012, yeah.
Was there a paternity test regarding Abigail?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was determined to be Abigail's biological father?
Tim.
So after your separation from Timothy Jones, where did you go to live?
Went to live with a neighbor,
And specifically, that neighbor was who?
Kathy and Eric Poole.
She your mother-in-law?
She is now, yes.
Sean's mother.
Yes.
And where did the defendant, Timothy Jones, go to live?
I believe that he was either making trips back to Mississippi around his dad's or staying in hotels.
Ultimately, do you know whether or not he purchased a home in Red Bank, being the home at South Lake Drive?
I wasn't aware of that at the time.
Let's talk about the child custody agreement. What was the final order regarding child custody?
I was not willing to give up my rights as their mother, so we came to an understanding, an arrangement that we had joint custody, him being the primary caregiver. I did not want him being the primary caregiver, if you will, but he was the better provider. He made the finances. I was just getting on my feet. I thought I was making the best decision I could as a mother.
What do you mean when you say he was the best provider at that time?
He had a steady job. He had a roof over his head. He had a vehicle.
Do you have any of those things in your own name?
I didn't.
Do you have a degree
No.
or a job?
No.
Do you have the money to afford a lawyer in your divorce case?
No.
So this was joint custody.
Yes, ma'am.
He had primary physical custody.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, pursuant to that child custody agreement, what order was put in place regarding visitation with the children? Was that supervised or unsupervised on your part?
I think to satisfy Tim, it was supervised by him.
All right.
So I agreed to that, yes, because I was willing to do whatever I had to do to see my children. Absolutely.
And at this divorce hearing, was he represented by an attorney
Yes, he was.
or you?
No, ma'am.
And so at that divorce hearing, it's supervised visitation
Yes.
for you to see your children.
Yes.
And who was to supervise your visits with your own children?
Tim.
Is there anything in that order that would allow you to have the children in your home, the home you shared with Sean and your mother-in-law?
No.
What, if anything, did the defendant ever say to you about whether the children could live with you?
That was never going to happen. My children were never going to be with me.
After your separation, were there times that he tried to
Yes, ma'am.
Do you ever accept his offer for you to come back to the marriage?
No, I think as a mother, I went back and forth with in my head for my children, but I did not.
Now, eventually, were you able to contribute to the support of the children?
Yes,
And how did you go about doing that?
I bought them clothing. I bought them what they needed and then some. I offered to give Tim some checks. I think at one point I asked him not to cash one immediately, but I did write some checks.
Provide support for the children,
Yes, ma'am.
in addition to clothing?
Yes, I bought them clothes, things they might need for school, diapers, wipes. Absolutely.
When you would have the supervised visitation with your children, where did that normally occur?
Chick-fil-A.
Who would be present for those visitations?
Tim and my 5 children.
Who decided the when and where of when you would have visitation with your children?
Tim.
So let's move forward to the time frame of 2014. How frequently was Tim allowing you to see the children?
It was becoming less and less frequent.
Would he always follow through with the supervised visits?
Not all the time. There were times that he caved in or would give me an answer as to, well, one of them got in trouble at school or something along those lines where I wasn't able to see them. It was their punishment.
So part of the punishment for the children would be to take away the visitation.
Yeah, and sometimes on an honest note, sometimes I was not able to make it myself. I didn't have the gas.
What, if anything, did you ever hear the defendant say to the children about taking away visitation from you?
He would just simply tell them, hey, you misbehaved at school, now you don't get to see her. Guess you don't get to see her on Saturday.
Ms. Kaiser, did you ever say to your children that you did not want them?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you become aware of a DSS report regarding the time in May of 2004?
I'm sorry, can you restate it?
Did you become aware of a DSS report regarding the time in May of
I was made aware of that.
2014? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Did DSS ever come to meet with you about that case?
No.
August 28, 2014. Do you remember that day?
Yes. Yes, I do.
When would you normally speak with your children?
I would call at 7 o'clock every night. Sorry. So sorry. Sorry, can I have a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Please phone me at the call.
She asked for a minute.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
I would call Tim's phone.
Call us phone that time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Who answered the phone when you called?
Tim did, but he had it on speakerphone.
What happened next?
I heard my son crying. And I asked him what was wrong.
Which son?
My son, Natan. I said, son, what's wrong? He said, Mom, I didn't mean to. And Tim was going on in the background, and you could have killed yourself, son. And then got mad at me because I was trying to calm my son down.
What did you say to him?
But it was okay.
What could you hear the time doing?
Dry heaving. Like that. Like gasping for air because he had been crying so much. Like he couldn't catch his breath. Like he was just like that.
You told Nathan it was okay.
Yeah. And Tim got mad and said, why do you always have to defend the kids? I guess you could say I always defended the kids. He was more the disciplinary, I was not. I went on to disagree with him and let him know that I didn't think, that I thought that my son had gotten the point and that I was tired of hearing my kids crying all the time. And Tim hung up the phone and before he hung up the phone, told me to shut the fuck up and hung up the phone. Sorry for the language.
He said that and hung up the phone. Amber, at the end of that conversation, you heard Nathan in the background. What was the tone of voice of the defendant, Timothy Jones Jr.?
He was outraged. He was outraged.
At any point in time, did he say he was afraid of Nathan?
No.
At any point in time, did he say Nathan was trying to kill him?
No. All he said was, you're going to kill yourself. You could have killed yourself, son.
Talking to Nathan.
Yes.
And after he hangs up the phone with you, what did you do next?
I tried calling him back. I called and I called and I called.
Is it possible to know how many times you called? More than one time?
Yes, ma'am. Maybe 6 or 7, guesstimate. I don't know.
Have you seen a phone log of calls that were made in this case, Ms. Kaiser?
Yes, ma'am.
And in addition to making calls after the phone was hung up on you by the defendant, did you also leave any type of message?
I did. I left, I believe, a couple voicemails.
One message or more than one message?
I can't remember.
I'm going to show you
Sorry.
the document and ask you whether or not you recognize it and whether or not that's a fair and accurate reflection of the phone calls that you made to Timothy Jones on the night of August 28, 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'm going to show you 3 items and ask you whether or not you recognize them, and if so, how.
I would say voicemail that I left for Tim.
And how do you recognize it? Does it bear your initials?
Bears my initials.
You've heard this recording?
Yes, ma'am.
This recording on August 28th at 9:16 p.m. Can you tell us whether or not it's a fair and accurate representation of your voicemail in its entirety?
Yes, ma'am.
This item?
That's another voicemail with my initials. Again, on August 28th at 9:34 p.m.
You've heard it in its entirety?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the message you left?
Yes, ma'am.
And then finally, this item?
That's another voicemail left on 8/24
9:38 p.m.
Yes, ma'am, with my initials.
And you've heard that message in its entirety?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would offer these items for evidence at this time.
Yeah, we would object to the voicemails being hearsay. No objections to the, these not marked. No objection to the phone records, once they're marked and identified.
We have now, Your Honor.
All right, you'll step in the jury room. I'll have you back out here in a moment. Don't talk about the case.
Ms. Tyler, I'm going to show you what it states, 178 and 179. I believe you've indicated you recognize those as phone calls that were made on the night of the 28th.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, can you pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you?
Sorry.
And then can you tell us whether or not you had telephone conversations or communications with the defendant that continued on through September 2nd of 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
Having reviewed 178 and 179, does this accurately reflect those communications with Mr. Jones?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you identified dates 181 and 182 as voicemail messages that you left for him on the night of the 28th.
Yes, ma'am.
After he hung up the phone. I'm going to show you what it states 180, also marked 8/28/14 at 9:38 p.m. Does it bear your initials?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it also a true and accurate representation of the phone message that was left for him?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this would be states 181, 182, 180, 178, and 179 for evidence.
Subject to the objections put on the record.
We would object under hearsay and prior consistent statements.
Understand? Made the record. They're allowed.
So I'm going to start here, Ms. Kaiser, with the night of August 28th of 2014. Calls being made, is McCauley your maiden name?
Yes, ma'am.
Calls being made from you, and I believe your testimony was to Tim's phone. Those calls begin at 7 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.
At those first series of calls, did he answer those calls?
I don't believe so, no.
Did they show as missed calls?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I want to look at this call here, incoming
Yes.
to Mr. Jones from you at 7:12 p.m. And that call is 1 minute and 54 seconds.
Yes.
Can you tell us whether or not that's the call that you referred to previously in your testimony?
That is the call that I had last spoken to my son. Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the child you heard on the phone in the background was Marital?
No doubt.
Were you ever able to get the defendant, Timothy Jones, back on the phone after he hung up on you that night?
No.
Or you shut up and hung up on him?
No, I was not able to.
So you attempt to make a call at 7:19, approximately 7 minutes later. It's 1 minute and 2 seconds. Did you leave a voicemail that time?
I'm not sure if I did that time.
Did he
I
have
see.
voicemail that would pick up?
He did.
So the 1 minute and 2 seconds that we're looking at, is his voicemail picking up?
Yes.
I'm going to object to her leading. I believe the witness's response was that she wasn't sure and moved to strike.
I'll let her rephrase and I sustain on deleting.
Do you ever recall him answering the phone after he hung up on you that night?
No.
Now, looking here at 9:34 p.m., you've had a chance to listen to that message?
Yes.
As well as other messages that were left that night for Mr. James.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we request permission to publish.
Subject to object.
First
Subject to
being
object.
States Exhibit 182, Your Honor.
Okay.
Please call back Jim so I can discuss a few things with you. Or you can text or whatever, but come over and get this. Bye. Tim, I'm not calling to argue or anything. I just, for like the past 2 or 3 phone calls, you've been like really on edge and angry or like I don't know how to explain. You saying you're like coming off really frustrated or whatever, and I was just concerned about you, so please call. I'm not calling to argue or anything. I hope, I wish as a parent, though, you would allow me to correct my children as well. And I believe that sometimes when you're frustrated, that you should allow the other parent to talk to the child. If I were angry, I'd ask you to probably speak to the kids, only because sometimes the way you come off, and it goes for me too, the way you come off, or when you're in angry mood, things don't come out right, and anyway, you just sound frustrated for the past 3 days, so please call me back when you get this. Bye.
Now States 182. 182.
Sam, the way you're talking to me is extremely unfair. I have, like, seriously, I didn't even say anything mean in our conversation just now, and you yelled and you hung up the phone on me. And it's wrong. I don't know if you need to get on your knees and start praying or what, but something's going on because you've been like this for the past 3 days. I don't think you understand sometimes the way you come off. You told me before that I am one of the people that you know will be completely honest with you about yourself because, well, you feel like I just like telling you about yourself, but that's not the truth. But, you know, this is one of the times where I'm telling you what I'm hearing and seeing. So, I don't know. I did nothing in this conversation just a minute ago to have you hang up on me and yell and act fanatical. So what is going on? You know, I didn't deserve to be hung up on at all. I talked exactly in this tone. All I said is what exactly happened. That's all I asked you. That's all I asked you. So, I mean, just, if you calm down and you want to talk or something, just call my phone, I guess, or text me. All right, good night. Bye.
So Ms. Kaiser, after that conversation, the night of the 28th, when you leaving these voicemail messages, when did you next have a conversation with the defendant?
I can't remember the exact date, but he was already on the road with my children's remains in his car.
This would have been Labor Day weekend, was that night that he hung up on you was Thursday the 28th.
Right.
The next weekend runs into Monday, being Labor Day. Were you initially concerned about the fact that he wasn't returning calls?
No, I was not. It was not uncommon for Tim and I to have arguments and him just not answer. It was not uncommon for Tim to just go disappear for a weekend and not answer his phone and just get back to me and say he was busy. It was not uncommon at all.
Right. So after that Labor Day weekend, and after Labor Day goes by, I'm going to take you to what is already marked in evidence, page 179, and ask you about this phone call that you made on September 2nd.
Yes, ma'am.
First, before we get even to September 2nd, we've got September 1st, which is Labor Day. Did you make the call?
I did.
Was it answered?
No.
Then on September 2nd at 5:59 p.m., did you make a call?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that call answered?
No, ma'am.
5 minutes later, 6:04 p.m. on the evening of September 2nd, did you make a call?
Yes, ma'am.
Was this one answered?
Yes.
Describe the defendant's demeanor and speech during this call on September 2nd.
He sounded very, maybe intoxicated. I believe I even asked him that on the phone call. He sounded happy but out of it, different.
Did he ever say exactly where he was calling or where he was at when you placed that call?
He didn't.
Did he give any explanation for where he had been and what had been going on?
I had asked him, and he said he had just been moving around a lot. Kind of sounded carefree. It sounded intoxicated, like he was on something.
During the time of that call on September 2nd, were you able to hear any of your children in the background?
No, ma'am.
I'm going to show you an item and ask you whether or not you recognize it.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it bear your initials?
Yes, ma'am.
This recording on September 2nd, 2014 was made by who?
Me.
And what type of app or application did you have on your phone that allowed you to record calls?
It was just a standard phone call recorder. You could pick and choose whose calls you recorded. I chose to record Tim's.
On this evening of September 2nd at 6:04 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this would be for evidence.
Same objection.
Same objection. Subject objection. That's you said it was 180?
185.
185. Made subject objection.
And Ms. Kaiser, as to states 185, can you tell us whether or not it was recorded in its entirety?
Yes, ma'am.
That conversation with the defendant.
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to publish your honor.
For those, what the heck?
My phone does.
Oh, well, that's why I called earlier. I was worried and...
I haven't traveled.
What do you mean you traveled a lot?
I said I've been traveling a lot.
Okay. Well, I just was worried because I haven't been able to reach you and... Are you off work now? Are you fixing to pick up the kids?
No, that's nice. Things are a little wet. Moving on.
Huh?
Supposed to be moving on, so things are a little wet.
You moved?
Supposed to be in the midst of moving, so things are getting a bit a little out of whack.
Oh, so then do you visit next Saturday?
Probably not.
Why?
You missed too. Don't put you in.
Well, I finally got a ride, Tim. I had to move things around so I could suit your schedule, seeing as how you can't work with me. And I finally worked it out so I could get it. No, Tim, but I can't help everybody else's work schedule either. Things change for everybody else's work schedule, so it's not my fault.
Well, if she loves you that much, she can make a little time for you, right?
Oh my God, Tim. Freaking really.
Yeah, you must have you put out the
wrong to say?
Just go, just done, alright. That's how you were with me.
I didn't put out enough for you. What the fuck?
I'm saying, the more a wolf puts out for a guy, the more he tries to do for her.
Okay, well, apparently I put out for you a lot because I've had plenty of kids with you, and you didn't do much to do anything for me or go out of your way for me. No, I beg to differ.
Oh, okay. Oh, you gotta get that way. It's like that.
No, it's not like that. You did certain things, but, you know, I rolled over all the time, and you got yours, so I don't want to hear it.
Alright.
Well, how's the kids doing in school? Am I at least going to be able to call them and reach you at 7 o'clock?
Let's see. Other than that.
Well, how am I supposed to start the kids?
That's
Are you drunk, Tim?
No, I'm not drunk.
Well, you sound really out of it.
I am out of it. I feel like shit the last couple days. I'm in traffic, so that's why I'm kind of not paying attention to you. I am and I'm not. I don't want to get you wrecked. Where's the taking me? Alright, let me get out of here.
So should I call back at 7 or no?
I'll probably be on the phone while you go. Or the phone was me. My other GPS broke. The phone's all I got now.
Alright, so you prefer that I don't?
I don't want to crash this Georgia traffic.
Alright.
Sure.
I said sure. I'm irritated that I'm not being able to talk to the kids at all. It's something weird about you disappearing for days. Did you take somebody on freaking vacation with you or something? You just didn't want me to know about it because you didn't want to hear about it?
I don't care if you know if I brought a group of prostitutes. I can tell them that one. Alright, we got to put your best back up my path.
Alright.
Bye.
Bye.
This time, Ms. Kaiser, did you have any indication that your children were in danger?
No.
The reference to the Georgia traffic, have you told you anything about going to Georgia?
No.
When you asked him about being on vacation, have he said anything to you about planning a vacation?
No.
During the course of this call, did he make it appear as if the children were still alive and healthy?
Yes.
Will you make arrangements to talk with them next?
Yes.
What happened after this call on the 2nd, Ms. Kaiser?
That's the last I heard from him.
Eventually, do you make a report with the sheriff's department that your children were missing?
I did. I was concerned about my children as well as Tim.
Eventually, after you report to the sheriff's department that the children were missing, were arrangements made for you to have a visit with the children on Saturday, September 6th?
That was already in, we always met on Saturdays, so I was just going to go on with it in hopes that they would show up.
And where was that visitation to occur?
Chick-fil-A in Lexington.
And was law enforcement also involved in monitoring that visit to see if he did in fact show up with the children during this time frame that they were considered missing?
They were waiting there as well.
Did you go to Chick-fil-A?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he ever appear?
No.
Did he ever respond to any of your messages after that conversation with him on September 2nd?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Kaiser, did you ever see any indication that the defendant was not of sound mind?
No.
Being his spouse for many years, what can you tell us about his mental status?
He's intelligent. He's smart. He's the smartest person I know.
Ms. Kaiser, did Natan have a favorite toy?
Yes, he did.
What was that toy?
Woody from Toy Story.
Did the defendant know that was his favorite toy?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Show you what is pre-marked States Exhibit 83 and 183 and 184. See if you recognize what's shown in these photographs.
It looks like my son's Woody doll in pieces. It's my son's Woody doll in pieces.
183 and 184, marked for identification to timeline. I'm going to show you a photograph which is a part of a defense exhibit already in evidence. Defense Exhibit 72. Excuse me, 72, A, Your Honor.
Yes. Yes.
72, A, Your Honor.
Charge again.
Kaiser, what can you tell us about Natan's physical style?
He was my tater tot. I called him Tater because he just couldn't catch up with his older siblings in height. He was very small.
Small for a 6-year-old?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what's marked. Defense Exhibit 6 as evidence. And ask you what's in that photograph. I'm sorry, what's in this, what is reflected here?
It's a $250 check written to Tim from me for the kids.
What is in these photographs? 87, 88, and 89. This is part of the support you mentioned that you were providing for the children?
Yes, ma'am. This is a letter to my son Elias from me. He sent a letter to my son Natan from me, and a letter to my daughter Mira from me.
Why did you write those letters, Ms. Kaiser?
Because I knew my kids were hurting over us not being together anymore, and I felt as though it was my place to apologize for breaking their hearts, for their broken home, but for all, and to also let them know that how proud I am of them.
Did each of your children receive those letters on Mira and Mira?
I handed them to them personally, yes, ma'am.
Was there any doubt in this class that they knew you wanted them?
My kids knew I loved them.
Those letters are already in evidence. Ms. Jones, read the letter you wrote to me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Mira, my sweet, sweet daughter. I know that your heart feels heavy and that you feel really sad sometimes. I want to reassure you, sweetheart, that you, along with your brothers and sister, mean everything to me. You kids are my world, and Mommy and Daddy were very blessed to have you. God. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let's take a break.
My babies, my babies. Oh, God. Oh, God.